From the land down under, with the rock at its centre, comes the little Aussie Watchman. Milo is a contrarian individual. A homosexual has adopted many conservative positions. He is outspoken and does not fear intimidation and in fact encourages controversy. On the 4th of December he spoke in Melbourne and attracted the demonstrators from the Facist Left. Melbourne Victoria has become a hotbed of fascist left violence. It has been inciting violence across the state, pro-life meetings, anti-mosque meetings, etc. Given that the authorities have either allowed them, or support them, or do not have the power to squash these violent thugs, it has inspired an opposition where there was none. The media is also to blame as it rarely highlights the violence perpetuated by the fascist left. Frequently highlights so-called right-wing nationalists because the media has a very strong left-wing bias. It rarely reports left-wing violence. This has encouraged the fascist left to become more violent and indulge in more intimidation. Indeed, that is what happened on the 4th of December when Milo spoke in Melbourne, and there were violent protests out the front. The media, for once, could not ignore the fact that the fascist left committed violence, but it minimised it by reporting that the right was equally as bad. In fact, if you delve into the facts, it becomes quite clear that this is not at all the case. Up to 500 fascist leftists decided to charge the 20 to 30 right propagandists almost immediately. These are the facts. The fascist left have become so brainwashed that their political enemies are evil, they believe it is morally acceptable to use violence, or anything else for that matter, to attack their enemies. All those involved in violent demonstrations should be made an example of. They should be made to pay for the damage they cause. The media should make an example of them and call them out for what they are, brainwashed, violent thugs. But no, nobody's even charged for anything. And on top of all that, the Victorian government decides to charge Milo $50,000 to pay for the police presence. That was the cost of free speech, or anti-fascist leftist speech in Victoria. That is why I have a major problem in this state, in Australia. There is no real justice when it comes to this group that violently intimidates its opposition. It makes a mockery of democracy in our country. It stops the free exercise of free speech and democracy by stifling debate, restricting attendance at otherwise peaceful meetings. Freedom of speech is no longer allowed in our wicked state. Freedom of speech, once a bedrock of leftist speech, is now disallowed as the radical left moulds itself into something new, and dare I say, like radical fascist leftists have done in the past. Fascism is a way of totally controlling people using absolute government force. It is a form of authoritarian nationalism. In the past, it has always arisen from the left side of politics, never from the right. The term was first used to describe Mussolini, the fascist Italian leader. He initially was a leading member of the Italian, get it, Socialist Party, before he reinvented himself as an authoritarian dictator. The same goes for Hitler, who was the head of the National Socialist Party before he became a dictator. Fascism is radical nationalist socialism. It has never arisen from the right side of politics, even though the right has always been nationalist. This is because the right side of politics sees national liberty in the way it sees personal liberty. Nations should not be unnecessarily controlled by outside globalist interests in the same way that the individual should not be unduly controlled by the state. The position of radical national socialist is not based on the same principle. Strict nationalism here is used to enact authoritarian control over the masses. That is the difference, and it is a big one. If Victorian authority and media continue to make excuses for and protect the fascist left violence, that movement will continue to increase in size and power and political power, and may take over the state using violence to silence all its political opposition. It is a restless evil that needs to be stifled as a newborn before it becomes unmanageable.